So this example shows some radio buttons with some associated events. So if you click on bold, the text in this text field becomes bold. If you click on italic, the text in the text field becomes italic. And if we click on bold and italic, both of the changes are applied to the text at the same time. We looked at the font class in a previous example as well, so I won't go into detail of the font class. But as you can see, the radio buttons are created and added to the JFrame. We have the JRadio button class that we can use for this purpose. The default is set to we can see that we have these default values, so the true would be if the radio button is already selected, and the false will be if the button is not selected. So this is how we can create the radio buttons, and we can add these buttons to the JFrame. So we can have create a group of this button. So we have a radio group, and we can then add this button into a group. So for example, the situation or the case with the radio buttons is that at the same only one button can be selected at the same time, as opposed to the check boxes. We in the check boxes we could select more than one checkboxes at the same times, but the radio buttons are used for situations where we can only have one choice. We cannot choose two options at the same time. So as you can see, when I click on the other choice, is the previous choice is deselected. That is why we have grouped these four buttons together, so that these only one of these buttons is selected at the same time. And we can see that how the different fonts can be associated with the each button. But we are using an inner class, a private inner class, as an event handler that implements the item listener. So we have this method that is item stat change method. It sets the font to the font that is selected at that time, and we can see over here that the font or the properties of the font are passed on to the constructor of this inner class. And then now this handling is a bit different from the ones that we have been doing previously we were doing all of the handling over here. Now what we are doing is that we pass the font the with the properties to the constructor of our inner class, as we can see over here. Then the plain font, the bold font, the italic font, bold and italic font, the properties have been set. The default of the text field is the plain font, and we have added the item listener to all of our buttons with their particular font type. So, and we have passed that font type to the constructor of the inner class, as you can see, and that font type will be set when that button is selected. Here in this example we have a list frame, and the event in this case is when we click on a color from the list. So this is a list given to us. It is a JFrame, and we are given a list. So when we choose a color or click on a color, the event in this case is that the background color should be set to that color. So this is the event, and this is the code for handling this event. So we have a bunch of colors. We have set them in the form of an array. These are the names of those colors, and these are the values associated to those colors. And we can create a list using the JList class. An object of the JList class is created, and by default the visible rows that are displayed by default are 5. and this is a single selection model, so we can only choose one color at the same time. In this example we'll see that we can choose multiple values at the same time. So all of these are added to the frame, and we saw that we have a scroll pane over here. As we can see, it contains the list, and by default only 5 values are displayed. So this is the JScroll pane, and this contains all of the values of the color. But the event that is handled over here is by the anonymous inner class list selection listener. As you can see, this anonymous inner class creation can be turned into a lambda expression as well. Lambda expression are not covered in this course, but what we are doing over here is add list selection listener that implements an anonymous inner class, and what we are doing is simply to set the background of our content pane to the color that is selected from this list. So we will get the index from this list, and we will check that index in this array, and we will set this to that color. We will set the background to that color. So that is all that this example is trying to do. In this example we have, for example, if we run this again, we have a bunch of values in this list, and we can select and copy. So the event in this case is to copy text from this list and add it to paste it over to this text field area. So we can select multiple values from here, and we can copy those using the control key. I have selected multiple values from here, and I'm able to copy those multiple values to this list on the other side. So if we look at the code, we have these two lists, and we have a button, and we have the values that are displayed in this list, and this is an in the form of an array. So when we create the list, we set the values in that list to the array, and we display 5 values by default. And the selection mode in this case is multiple interval selection, so we can select any values from the given list, and then a JScroll pane is created and the listed added to the JScroll pane, and all of these are added to our JFrame. So we add a button to our JFrame as well, and we add an action listener to that button, and that uses an anonymous inner class, and the action performed on that class. So it sets the list. What the button does is it will get the selected values from the color JList and set the list of the copy JList, that is our second JList, to those values. So that is what this is what it is doing. We add the J button to we add the object of the J button to our JFrame, and the copy JList will be an object of the JList class. Create list to hold copied color names. Again, it can by default display 5 values, and we have selected the width of the JList, the height of the JList, and the selection mode for the second JList is single interval selection, and we have added it to the just scroll pane. If for example we have more than 5 values in that scroll pane, we will be able to scroll through the values. So that is what this multiple selected selection frame was doing. We have some other examples in this code. For example, this is label frame. Although this is not using event handling at this stage, but it can tell us about how we can add a label to our, or how we can add an image as an icon to our labels. So we have 3 labels on a JFrame. If I run this code, we'll be able to see that we can add different icons to our label. So this is a label with text, this is a label with text and icon, and this is a label with icon and text at bottom. So we can set icons to the labels. As you can see, we can set this informative text to the labels, and we can set the direction and location of the text on the labels as well. This is the helper code that we can go through and see how it is done. So this information will be displayed on top of the JFrame, and as I said that we can create an object of the JLabel class, and this text will be displayed on top of the label. And if you want to add an icon to the label, you need to first read that icon or from your hard disk, and this is the location or the path that you provide to this object, that is an object of the icon class, and that will be retrieved from the hard disk and stored in this object, and you can then pass this object to the label, and this will be the location where the icon will be set. And this is the tooltip text that you can set on top of the label, that will display when you hold your mouse on top of the label. This will display the detail of the label to you. And similarly, you can set the position of the text to the center, to the bottom, and you can set the icon as well to the label using the set icon method. You can set the text of the label using the set text method. Similarly, we have this text field example that uses an event handler action listener in this case. So if I run this code, what should happen is we can have 4 different kinds of text fields over here. So this is a password field, as you can see. Let's look at the code now. We have 4 text field over here. This is a JPassword. One was a JPassword field that hides the text. For example, we do not want the user to see what we are entering over here, so we can use the JPassword field. As you can see over here, this is JPassword field, and we have other objects of the JText field class. So the text field 1, we have set the size of the text field 1, so, and we are not initializing it to any default text. So the size of this is 10. This way, that means that we can have 10 letters or 10 columns in this text field. Then we have text field 2 that has some default text. As you can see that if we do not pass any text to it, then there is no text is added to the text field. If you pass some text to it, the text is added to the text field when we run the code. We can also disable the text field. For example, this is what we did in our calculator example, that if we do not want your text field to be editable by the user, so you can set the set editable property of this text field to false, and now we cannot change or edit this text field. Similarly, we have an object of the JPassword field, and this is the text that is displayed over here, but we cannot see it, and we have now added all of these to our JFrame. Text field handler class, that is an inner class. An object of that class is created and registered for each of these components, as we can see over here. And the event listener, or the action listener in this case, will be when we press enter key inside the as you can see, when you press the enter key inside the text field, whatever there is in the text field is displayed on the screen. So we do not have any text in this text field by default. I have added some text, and this is the action that is being performed. So if I try on this one, uneditable text field, as we can see. If I try on this one, hidden text, as we can see, the text has been displayed. So this may not be ideal, but this is how we are handling these events, and this event is being handled using the inner class. As you can see over here, this is being handled by the inner class. You can go through all of these codes. If we understand it, we can add components to our frames like this. We can add components to our frames by dragging and dropping from this palette, and we can also create these using the code. You can follow the method that you find more easier. This is maybe another simple example of how to add a text field, and we can do the same using the drag and drop from this palette that is provided to us. We can also have event handlers for our mouse events. For example, this is an example where when we click on our, as you can see on the screen, it counts the number of times and the button that we have clicked. So this follows or counts the button events, the mouse button events, as we can see over here. So we have event handlers for our mouse as well. So this is the status bar that displays the details at the status at the bottom of our JFrame, and this is the string that we want to display on the status bar. And this is the inner class that is implementing that event. So if we can follow the position of the mouse, if, for example, event.getX will give us the X position of our mouse on the screen. Event.getY will give us the Y position of the mouse on the screen. And we can see that the number of times that it has been clicked by calling the get click count method on the event. And we can also have the meta button if we have that on your mouse, if you have used the conventional mouse. So you can get the details for the center mouse button, the left mouse button, or the right mouse button as well. So these are the methods that are built in for all of these mouse events. Similarly, we can track our mouse as well, as we will be able to see in this code. So if we move our mouse on the screen, as we can see, we are getting the XY position of our mouse. As you can see over here, it is getting the positions of our mouse. If you want to look at the code, so we have a panel and a status bar that displays the details on that status bar. So if we move the mouse on that panel, it should display the position of our mouse. Now here we are implementing two interfaces. Now Java allows us to implement multiple interfaces, but we understand that we cannot inherit from more than one class in Java, but we can implement multiple interfaces. So let's try to click something. Clicked at this position, as we can see, moved out. If you move out of the panel, that is displayed as well, and you can see all of these, how these events are handled by the mouse handle class that implements the mouse listener and mouse motion listener interfaces. So the mouse clicked event is handled by this button that will get us the position of the mouse. The mouse pressed event is handled by this this method, and the mouse released, the mouse entered, and the mouse exited, and the mouse dragged, the mouse moved method. These methods are were written from these interfaces and have been implemented. Or here you can go through the code. For example, when we go out of the panel, the text is set to white, as you can see, and the message is mouse outside panel, as we can see over here. So let's try to drag the mouse dragged at position. As you can see, now dragging the mouse, I'm holding the left key down and dragging the mouse, so that message is displayed on the screen. This one is moved, so the moved message is displayed on this label. You can go through these examples that are provided over here and practice with these examples. Try to understand how different events are handled using inner classes and anonymous classes. This will conclude our lecture 24 over here, and we'll see you in the next lecture.